Ska Mania and Golden Voice presents ska legend, Stranger Cole.
Who are you that I should be mindful of?
Stranger Cole playing a very special show at the El Rey Theater in Los Angeles.
And were rescued. That's a fact.
Stranger will be backed by LA's finest, the Steady 45s.
And try to bite the underfeed you.
Plus the recently reunited Rocksteady veterans,
Yes,
Ocean 11.
Lives after you.
Also performing the Elysians, DJs Mila, Lady ILA, Marv Mack, and MC Junior Francis. Tickets for this all-ages show are on sale now at AXS.com and the elray.com. Don't miss Stranger Cole, one of the originators of ska, coming to LA live and direct from Kingston, Jamaica.
When I call your name, you pay me no mind. When I call your name.
And now, on with the show.
Australian comedian Aaron Gocs has appeared in the Netflix film The Merger, the show Gocsy's Classics, and has hosted several video segments for Vice. He's gone viral several times for different surreal comedy videos, and he's built a substantial audience in Australia. But here in the US, he's not well known at all, which is why we're happy to bring him on the In Defense of Ska podcast. Besides, he's a big ska fan. So we talked to Aaron and get a sense of what the ska scene is like in Australia. And we talk about a whole lot of other stuff too.
Aaron, have you ever been to Australia?
I have not been to Australia.
Neither have I, but I feel like if we ever go to Australia, one of the people we'll hang out with is Aaron Gocs.
Absolutely.
Aaron enjoys the show. Aaron's a comedian, a big comedian over in Australia. And I feel like Aaron could show us where to go to do all the good, authentic Australian things.
I feel like without knowing much about Australia, Aaron is very Australia.
Yes.
Like he embodies the culture of Australia.
The real culture.
Yeah, the real culture. In fact, I don't even understand some of his jokes. That's how deep into the culture he is.
That's how you know that it's authentic. If you don't get it, it's authentic.
I didn't realize when you first said you wanted to be on the show, I didn't know that you were the guy with cornrows that eats corn while listening to corn person.
Oh yeah. It's funny because I often do podcasts and things here in Australia, and they ask me like if I'm known out of Australia, and I'm not. But that was more like a meme, and it was like it wasn't attributed to me. It was just like, but I could see that it was going around the world. But yeah, that was a long time ago. That was yeah.
So that was one of those things where you made the video and then people started to share it and remove your name from it?
Yeah. So just kind of like still shot, and I'd see memes like my name. I wasn't attributed to it. Yeah, my name was cut out, but you would see it popping up all over the world, like South America, North America, and crazy. and that was very early days for me putting things online as well. So it was pretty surreal. Yeah, it kind of shows how powerful the internet is. And but then after that, I had a video I put out that just only really went big in Australia, but at least that was more attributed to me than just being a meme, you know.
Is the classic stitch up? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's a bit of Aussie lingo, but
yeah, you're gonna have to explain that to us because we watched it, and I don't know if Aaron had the same experience, but I didn't get it.
Yeah, I watched it twice, and I was like, I don't know if I understand what's happening.
It's very Aussie. Like it's just kind of prank. It just means like pranking someone, basically. I guess like Ashton Kutcher, like you've been punked or whatever, you know. Like, yeah, but yeah, I was like, that was another thing where I didn't expect. I just put it out thinking a few people would see it, but the power of social media traveled so quickly. Yeah, but yeah.
I want to ask you. I have a question about the cornrow. Listening to corn video.
Yeah.
I watched the whole video. Did you do that in one take, or did you do that in multiple takes?
One take. Everything is very lo-fi. What I do, it's very.
You nailed it that first take.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because I just had the hairstyle. My partner at the time was doing the like braiding African hairstyles, and then so she did that for me, and then it was like, or I think I put a post up saying what should I do, like something silly, and then someone just said that, like eat some corn while you're eating corn, and I said, what if I also play corn, like this, just as many silly things as I can, and yeah. I think it didn't really deserve my name to get attributed to it, so I probably got what I deserved, but I didn't think I was going to go around the world as a meme. Yeah.
Did it hurt to get the cornrows put in?
It does actually, yes, and
Yeah.
I haven't had it since. I've had a lot of different hairstyles over the years.
Yeah. Do you currently have the wild mullet going on?
Yeah, I do. I've had that for a long time now, but I had dreads at one point because I was upset when I was obsessed with Less Than Jay. I wanted to be like Roger. Yeah.
I also had ill-advised white dreads.
Dyed black.
Yeah, well, that's I was gonna say everything. Yeah, talking about like corn and stuff. It's funny because everything comes back to new metal and Less Than Jay. But yeah, I wanted that. I wanted my dreads to look like that, and also I don't know if you know like Jay from Friends or Wrong. They're kind of like punk guy dreads, But I went along to this hairdresser and they ended up looking like corn hair because they made them like that like pointy and sharp and going out sideways sort of dreads. Yeah,
Sure.
Nothing like what I had in my mind, and also this was circa like 04 sort of thing, so it wasn't really the done thing to take photos like it is now with so many phone cameras around. And
right.
You know what I mean? Do you remember that era when it was like rarer to? Yeah. So I don't have any photos of it, unfortunately, because it's a pretty big thing now for performers. I think rappers might have started it where you use like a photo from your childhood, you know what I mean, and gets a bit of attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that would have, even though it's not my childhood, I was like 20 or something at the time. I feel like if I had that photo of me with dreadlocks, that would get a bit of interest for one of my live shows or something,
That would be an album cover for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So the other thing you did, so this is around 2016, I think, right? 2015, when the videos we're talking about went up. You also got a lot of traction for doing Simpsons impressions as well, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, the way that came about is comedians, when they're just hanging out with each other, like everyone thinks, oh, they must be the funniest guys, but it's not true at all. I know I've heard a few of your reps with the comedians on, and I love it, but there's a bit of there's a stigma around like trying to do jokes on each other and that, like you're not supposed to do that. But so when we're hanging out with each other, we more just try to talk normally, but also occasionally you might just say something a bit silly, or so that was my kind of thing I'd do with a few comedian friends is just like, what if Simpsons were Australian, sort of thing, or really bad impressions. And I think you've probably seen it. There's been so many when they do like different styles of animation of the Simpsons and live action ones and all that sort of thing. There's been a lot of it, yeah. But so we just did that for fun, and we're like, oh, like purposefully bad Simpsons, like, oh, hi, I'm Skateboard Boy, and it's, instead of using real names and things like that, yeah. So that's how that started. So again, it was the early days where I just put it up and had no idea, and yeah, it did really well. I feel like it's kind of cheating, bro. Anything with Simpsons is just this massive inbuilt audience. Anything's going to do well, probably. Yeah.
Can you delight us with your Marge and Homer?
Oh, again, this might go over your head. It's very Aussie, but I'll give it a go. So Marge is like, Homer, where have you been all day? And then Homer's like, I've been down at the pub. It's very, very Aussie. That's basically that's the whole guy. Is just if Simpsons were Australian, but 'Cause I don't know if you've seen that ep where they come to Australia, but we're not really like that.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Close, but not.
So okay, so you are a ska fan.
Yes, massive.
You discovered ska in like 1998. Is that when you discovered ska?
Yeah, that's right. Mighty Mighty Bosstones was my introduction. I'm not sure if that's a similar theme over there, but I'm sure there was a lot of similarities, the same sort of bands that blew up there over here as well. But yeah, Mighty Mighty Bosstones were huge. With the impression that I get was all over our radio.
Yeah, that's the biggest 90s ska single actually here in the US as well.
Yeah. Because I know from like retroactively reading the history, there was sort of bubbling underneath was kind of like No Doubt, Sublime, and over there. I mean, we it hadn't hit here as much. Although No Doubt did blow up with that whole Tragic Kingdom album here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that for me it was my Bosstones. So I loved it. Went out, bought the album, which not many people did. They were sort of their thirst was quenched with just the single playing on the radio. But there was a few of us who were like, yeah, I want to know more. So yeah, went and bought the CD album, and yeah, I loved it. It was just like, I'd been into punk before, like Green Day, Offspring, Blink, all that sort of thing, and then so it was like this emerging of sounds, where it's like the punk and the ska and the horns and Dickie's amazing voice, which is a mixture of few packs of smokes and whiskey and whatever, Boston accent. And yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Now you said that that the Warped Tour also happened in 1998. Warped Tour started in 95, but 98's the first year it went to Australia.
Yeah, that's right. 98, and I actually didn't go 98. 99 I went because I was like really young, I was like when the 98 tour came in January, I was still 12. And which is very young. I wasn't even in high school. I just starting high school, so like I was like reading about and seeing all these punks going, and it just didn't wasn't on my radar to go along. But then 98 they Warped Tour came through, and it did well and like sold, and a lot of people went. But it was funny because once it passed through, that was when all the bands blew up, like Blink became huge, Bosstones were huge, quite a few of them, but they blew up afterwards. So it was kind of like they must have really left an impression. Oh, I didn't even mean to make that pun, but like. But thinking back, it was just it was great because we really have that all those extreme sports that they brought. We have that culture here as well. It's quite a lot of those bands like Pennywise and Blink already had a little bit of an underground following here, where they'd do a few tours where they really connected with that surf and skate sub scene. So it went really well. But yeah, it was really exciting. And then I went the next year, but in between I went to my first ever gig. I said I was really young, but I believe it was June 98, my first ever music gig. So I just turned 13. And I'm not sure if you heard of The Living End. They're really big.
Yeah, I'm familiar with them.
Yeah. So they're like punky with a bit of they had the double bass, sort of a Stray Cats vibe.
They had a few ska songs too. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was my first ever show. And the very first band, opening band, was a ska band from Brisbane called Wiseacre. So yeah, that's my very big link to ska. Is my first ever live band was a ska band.
So I forgot to ask, where did you grow up at? Did you grow up in Brisbane or somewhere else?
Yeah, that's right, Brisbane. It's like the third biggest city in Australia. So yeah, I'm from Brisbane. Yeah.
So you saw Wiseacre and you saw Living End. You were already kind of interested in ska, but then you got to see some local acts too.
Yeah, well, it was very small by then. Was sort of like, yeah, went and got the Bosstones CDs, and I was like, oh, this is cool, but didn't dive in too much. then I saw this Wiseacre who were great, and started getting involved, going to watch them in the local scene. And then I was there's a local, we call it community radio. I'm not sure if you have that. It basically like just a radio station that's run by volunteers and things. Like, I don't know if it's college radio over there or.
I would say public radio is the general term, but college radio is a form of public radio.
Yeah, well, it's all similar, but yeah, basically, because it's a very niche subgenre ska. So it was the show over here anyway. It was called Scar Trek, which was every Thursday night at 8 p.m. So I started listening to that, and then I loved it. Wouldn't miss an episode every week. Tune in, doing my skank in my bedroom. Yeah, I loved it, and so from there it just grew. And I was, like I said, I my introduction to music through like punk and stuff. So I was heavily into sort of the Fat Records, Epitaph. So I got into like I was listening to all those bands, but would sort of really enjoy the Mad Caddies and anything with a ska edge to it. Yeah, and eventually made my way to becoming Less Than Jake, my favorite band. Yeah.
So when you think back to that show, Living End and Wiseacre, do you have any memories from that show that stick out to you?
Well, it's 1998, long time ago now, and I was very young. So they're very vague memories. I do have some kind of they're just sort of like screenshots in my mind, I guess you'd call them. Where, but yeah, just like it's like these brand new sounds that you're hearing, and just like, whoa, you can strum the guitar upwards. Like, this is great. And yeah, and the sense of humor in the bands I like. Obviously, now I'm being a comedian, I've always had a sense of humor, but that's what I've always loved, music that's had that in the lyrics and the style as well. And because I think a lot of that, the punk and ska, and it all goes hand in hand, where they're similar aesthetics, the logos, and they use a lot of the animations and cartoons, you know what I mean, like that.
Yeah.
And as a young teenager with a lot of energy, you're getting into skateboarding and all of that sort of, it's really enticing. Yeah.
Well, how would you describe Wiseacre? What they sounded like, what they look like, how they performed?
Yeah, so they had this. It was interesting because that's one of the things about ska bands, isn't it? Is like noticing the setups and who does what. And so the singer actually played trumpet, which I thought was cool, like doing both, which you don't see that often. So they were a 4-piece, so guitar, drums, bass, and the singer and trumpet. And very like punk. They threw in a bit of like rockabilly riffs and stuff, and the lyrics were just silly, like Australian stuff. One of their biggest, most popular songs was called "Let's Go Bowling," and they just pretty much repeated "Let's Go Bowling." And but it was fun. And yeah, and then they actually launched that EP. The show for it was actually on a Tenpin bowling alley. Like, when I say on, literally they put the stage on the lanes. Like, and I think that never happened ever again, because the lanes got wrecked by people standing on, because you know how it's all special timber and glossy. I don't know the ins and outs of Tenpin bowling, but yeah, it was a nice, fun idea, but I think it cost them a lot of money and ruined it. So it was one and done for that idea. But yeah, that was another great memory.
Was that a cover of Let's Go Bowling's song?
I think it's just their own song, actually. But yeah, they had a lot of sort of funny ideas. That's what I said, a lot of humor in the songs. And another song was about a plumber coming over to their house and to do work, and sort of seducing their partner, and these funny humorous things like that. And yeah, it was, unfortunately there's not much of a trace of them on the internet, because it just kind of yeah, I remember going to their website. Remember the late 90s websites, like, took a long time to load up, and
Sure.
yeah. I remember being in the message boards and chat boards, and a lot of those websites didn't make it through to today, unfortunately. And if the band breaks up and isn't interested in the things being online, it is quite hard to keep records of that, unfortunately. But yeah, they were a great band, and I got to know them, actually become friends, and I ended up playing in their cricket team, which there's like a social competition in Brisbane for bands, and they entered a band in. Yeah, so I was like, this is surreal. I'm, because it's 11-a-side cricket, so you need as many people as you can. But yeah, so that was quite fun.
So this whole league was different bands?
Yeah. It's like just social, obviously. I guess the equivalent. I think there's some softball leagues over there where I've seen some of those punk bands playing, and yeah, but just social. It's all for fun, nothing serious. But yeah, that was quite fun playing a sport with a ska band.
Now, did you become friends with them just by going to their shows so much, or did you? How did that happen?
Yeah. So went to as many shows as I could, like whenever I saw them advertise, and at first, like you just see each other and look, when there's small shows, so we'd be looking at each other in the eye, and then go and have a chat afterwards, and yeah, got to know them like that, and I think they thought I was stalking them, but no, nothing serious like that. But I remember at the time, a lot of, because obviously I was young guys, 13, 14, so I could only go to all ages shows, but there was quite a lot at the time, and they would put them in like skate parks and parks and things. I actually remember Real Big Fish coming and playing in a park in Brisbane. That was crazy, because Real Big Fish was another one that really blew up in like I said, I'm sure it's the same. The bands that were big there, a lot over here as well. But and I did love them at the time, but I quickly grew out of Real Big Fish.
Well, what kind of audience? Like, how many people do you think were at that park show?
I think there would have been a few hundred, actually. Yeah, it was quite a big event. They were very popular. Which is strange because not many people did delve into ska like I did, and a few very niche as a subgenre. I'm sure it's the same thing where you guys probably think like, what if these people who come to like Real Big Fish actually looked into more bands, But do you ever think like that? Like, yeah, because like the rock radio station here, like the big sort of rock commercial station, will still play the Bosstones, and I'll think, do any of these people ever think I want to look deeper into the Bosstones, or they're just happy to keep hearing this one song, Yeah, but I kind of, because I kind of went away from that Real Big Fish style where it's kind of I've heard you guys talk about where it's more, so I guess rock with horns, I guess rocky with horns, yeah.
A little bit more kind of pop punk oriented ska, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember I started to go towards like Bucko 9. I love them. For a period of time, the song "My Town" was actually one of my favorite songs. I love that song. But yeah, but yeah, Less Than Jake. I became obsessed with them. I think it's a bit of a running theme on your show. Becomes a point to talk about Less Than Jake, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. I think Less Than Jake comes up a lot. Real Big Fish comes up a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike Park. Were you a fan of Skank and Pickle and Asian Man Records?
No, I didn't actually. It's hard to kind of cover too much territory. I didn't actually delve that deep, but mainly, yeah, Less Than J, Bucko 9, Mad Caddies, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a good way to find out about bands too is when another band obviously does a cover, and one of the Australian ska bands that got the biggest, they were called Area 7. Not sure if you heard them, but they had they had a few cover songs like B-sides that made me check out bands. So one of their early EPs, they had Healthy Body Sick Mind by Op Ivy, so that made me look into Op Ivy. And then they had a Hey Ska by Suicide Machines, which made me look into them. So that was a really good way to look into other bands as well. And then the compilation CD was obviously massive back then. So
what comps do you remember having?
Well, like I said, my sort of area was more of the Fat Wreck Epitaph.
Sure.
So there wasn't a huge amount of ska on that, but there was like your sort of like your Mad Caddies, and then Rancid and NoFX had ska touches to them, obviously, and yeah, but then and also Burning Heart had some like Swedish ska bands and things. Yeah, but I actually blame those CD compilations for making me quite a lazy music finder, because it's crazy. It's like for $10 or whatever, you had 20, 30 sort of bands all doing a song each, and yeah, it was just so easy to like not have to look outside of those labels.
Sure.
That it's made me quite a lazy listener.
So you kind of have like the labels curate your music interest for you.
Yeah, and it made me realize over the years. I remember the talk of sort of some of those labels being so powerful, and them deciding who gets to be big, and that, and I didn't really understand what it meant, and now I do, where I realize if you could get on those, it was this kind of like a key to getting quite well known and popular, because it was like they did have the power, a lot of those labels.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and because I actually found out when I say I'm lazy music finder, so like now I have my favorite acts, and so one of my favorite bands is, well, no, I say one of, is the Mountain Goats, and that's how I found out about you guys from the John Darnell app.
Oh yeah, you're like, oh, he's doing a ska interview. I got to check this out.
Yeah. So, but I'm glad I did, because yeah, it's awesome. I love it. I've listened to everything since, and I'm going backward to the previous stuff and catching up. But and he's there. Another reason why I'm quite lazy, because they have so much material that you end up like following everything they've released. There's no room for any other bands.
Yeah, because he's doing like 2 or 3 albums a year now.
Yeah, oh, it's crazy. I can't keep. I used to would make sure that I would get whatever he puts out or they put out, but I can't keep up now. It's just crazy. Yeah.
So, when you first getting into ska and punk, I was listening to an interview, and you talked about how you used to be an avid stage diver.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So I went through different stages in life. So when I first went along, I loved it because I was this young fella, very fit, flexible. It's easy when you're young and fit, And I actually remember that Warp 99 because it was just before all these new safety rules came in, because we had a tragic incident at a big festival with Limp Bizkit. There was a death, and which is really sad.
What happened? Was it from stage diving?
It was more the crush, so similar to kind of wood. What is it? The Woodstock. Sorry, and yeah, it was really tragic. A young girl passed away just from the crush. So, and they really cracked down on after that safety at festivals and big events. But I remember, so Warp 99. I remember people used to bring in like a bodyboard, and they'd get people to stand on it. And I remember like standing, and I'm this really young, like small 13-year-old child, but I'm being held up by these punks and surfers and everything on this bodyboard. So like that was another very vivid memory I've got. It was like Pennywise are playing, and yeah, I'm this young fella being held up by a bodyboard. But yeah, I was really into it. And then a few years later, going through my, as we do in life, experimental years, and you start finding out about things. I had this strange period where I hated people that were crowd surfing. So I was like anti, which now I've grown out of, but it was this like, I was like, why do they think we have to hold them up and all, this like, and now I've grown out of that, and I'm just making up for lost years and doing it as much as I can.
So you're doing it now again?
Yeah. I'm making up for lost years. Yeah. So I was actually, there was a festival, the biggest music fest here is called Splendor in the Grass. It has like 30,000 or 40, one of those massive, huge ones. And there's actually the biggest radio station here, Triple J, got this video of me, and I was up there. It felt like it went forever. It actually went for a minute. I was crowd surfing, but a minute is a long time to be held up, right?
Yeah.
And I was like passed around. It's almost like I don't know if you've seen that Homer Simpson being passed around. It felt like that because I started at the front and got moved like all the way back and then did like a lap of, yeah. I'll send it to you guys if I can find it. It's pretty crazy, but yeah. So I was just being, it's pretty surreal. Yeah. Now that I've made it through those crazy experimental years where I was against it, I'm making up for lost years now.
Why were you against it? Did it feel like it was infringing on the crowd?
Yeah, well, like I said, when you look back on younger years and some experimental things, you're not really sure. You just because I started looking into like political things, and I even tried. I had a couple. I almost made it to 2 years of vegetarianism, but I'm making up for it now. But a lot of my jokes about sort of eating fast food and bad food and stuff, but so people that would shock people here if they heard that. But yeah, I was like getting into like Pennywise, what they were talking about, and it makes you delve in deeper. And I'd watching all the Michael Moore docos and whatever, no effects and all. I think I just read something because you know how in the sub scenes of punk, how you've got sort of straight edge and whatever and all of that. And I think I was reading about just sort of going along to shows and you shouldn't have to be sort of pushed around or expect to cop a kick in the head or something like that, which actually like I said, I have gotten back into it, but I am very wary. I'm not a huge man, but I am a bit overweight, so I will sort of look to see where the audience I'm going to jump into if I think they can handle a large man jumping into them. So yeah, I still do believe that it is good to look at and think about, and I try and think where my feet are as well, so I'm not going to boot someone in the head. I think that's all important still. Yeah.
Have you ever been dropped?
Yes, yeah, that is so that's another element of the safety, not just the other people. It can be unsafe yourself as the surfer as well. Yeah, I've had like quite a few times where it's going great, you're being held up, and then for whatever reason, I don't know if the people just give up or you get moved to a section where they're not quite as strong, and you can just go head first straight into the floor, which isn't great. So I probably should ease up on it a bit. And the other thing is Scar too is like used to get into a bit of the skanking back in the day, which was great. I don't know.
You're not skanking anymore?
No, I've retired the skanking boots, unfortunately.
Should bring it back. It's fun.
Well, also, like I said, my sort of sub scene of Scar was the kind of like the Less Than Jake, Mad K's. It didn't quite match up. Oh, I shouldn't say, some of the songs it does work, but
what is it about Less Than Jake that they became your favorite band?
It is interesting you asked that because I have thought about it a lot over the years, and I think it's just perfect for like I don't really want to make it a gender thing. I could say any teenage or young person, but I think in particular like a young boy, young teenage male, you like just really connect with the sound and the lyrics, it's like, and looking back, they do kind of blend in together. There's a lot of like moving out of a boring town, and yeah, me and my friends used to joke about it, like, oh, my favorite track, Less Than Jake track, it's the one about the moving out of a boring town, but it's like that doesn't really narrow it down, but yeah, it's so like I was saying about the look of it too, you've got all the animations and the logos, and it just all, because I remember like I hadn't even seen the band when I first got Hello Rockview, and I was just like, these cartoons just look great, and it's got the comic book inside, and it's the kind of not super fast like hardcore or anything, but it's that fast enough that just really connects with a teenager. And then yeah, like I really obsessed with them. I became actually one of their tours. It was only 3 nights in a row, but I really shouldn't have done it because like I didn't get any sleep or anything. But I like watched them, then drove to the next one, like followed them 3 cities in a row, and yeah, it was actually very unsafe. I shouldn't.
Well, what were the 3 cities and how far apart were they?
So it was the 3 biggest Australian cities. So it started in Melbourne, and then it moved to Sydney, and then Brisbane, and they're all about. They're roughly like 11 hours drive apart.
Oh my god!
Yeah, so there was a lot of driving through the night and not much sleep, and yeah, it wasn't good. I'm not proud of that.
Yeah, and they're all probably on a bus with a driver who's sleeping during the day. Here you are enjoying the show and then driving all night to the next one.
Yeah, and it was very much when you're obsessed with things, you don't really think like carefully about things. I didn't really like they were great shows, but it was still kind of like 1 or even 2 max would have been enough. But it was in my mind. It was like, oh, I love this band; they're my favorite. I can't miss any of when they're here, and you know that kind of thinking. Like,
Well, sure. I mean, they're also coming all the way to Australia. May as well catch all 3 shows. Who knows when you get to see them again?
And it was like I was really obsessed with them, and I was just like, whoa, I can't believe they're here, and yeah, and like that. I was like, when they arrived, I'm like, I wonder what they're doing right now, and this very strange sort of obsession, yeah, and yeah, like, but it was awesome. It was like they're great, like yeah. I was just like, it confirmed everything that I'd thought. Like they were. I loved them on the record and loved them live, so it was just really like I couldn't believe I'm there watching it. It was so good.
So one thing that bands do when they come over to Australia is they get these posed photos with koalas. Have you seen these?
Yeah, well, that's actually the koala sanctuary is in Brisbane, where I live, Lone Pine. So we do have all these photos of some quite interesting different celebs and artists and things that have been there. You get like Slipknot or something like in their masks posed with koala, and it's not too far from where I live actually. And I've been there a few times, but it's that thing of when you know something is there, you don't kind of rush out to it because I could go to that at any time. And
Yeah.
I actually haven't been there that many times, but I do love a lot of the Australian animals, and I like a lot of the ones that don't get as much. Like everyone knows about kangaroos and koalas. I like the sort of wombats and
Give us the cult animals.
Yeah, what are the underground animals?
yeah. Oh, wombat! You got to find out about wombats. They've got this at their butt, I guess you could say. It's like a hard plate, so it's like their enemies run into it. That's their which is pretty cool. Like they use that as a defensive thing. I'd love to have like just a hard bum to keep my enemies away. And so they're pretty cool. Emus. I don't know if you know much about emus. They're like an ostrich.
Yeah.
Yeah, familiar with them.
And a bit of a self plug here, but I've got this thing coming out in the new year. It's like a web series called Emu Wars, which is it's a comedy we made, but it's an actual thing that happened like about 100 years ago, where the Australian Army had to take on emus because there was too many of them. And the popular sort of story or joke is that the emus won. They beat the army. So, yeah.
They're still there.
So keep an eye on them. Yeah.
Still standing.
And the actual, yeah. And another funny thing about that is there's the one we made, which is a low budget independent, but there's also apparently in the works a big budget one. So everyone thinks that's what we were working on, but we weren't. That's got like John Cleese from what is it? Faulty Towers and Monty Python, and yeah. I think Jim Jeffries is attached. It's crazy. It's like big budget, and we were like eating sandwiches for lunch, and yeah.
What about so one of my favorite animal stories related to Australia is the cane toads.
Oh yes, yeah. So there again, I feel like everything come back to where I live, but yeah, they're only really here in Queensland. So they were brought. So the dung beetle was brought to sort of put on farms to deal with cow poo.
Mhm.
Is that the right word? Do you guys
Yes.
say poo or
You can say manure.
I don't know if that's an Aussie
poo.
word or yeah, feces, whatever. Anyway, or dung. Yeah, dung is it. Anyway, so the dung beetle was brought to deal with cow dung, and then they took over and got out of hand. So they brought in cane toads to deal with them, who then got out of hand, and we don't know what to do now. Now they're just everywhere, and they're really disgusting. Like I used to have this night shift job. I was a taxi driver working through the night, and I'd come home, and there was just toads everywhere jumping around in my front door, and I hate them. They're disgusting, and I'm just like, I might just wait in my car until they go. And but people have all these like suggestions of how to deal with them. They're like, oh, you can hit them with a golf club, and the worst one. This is a real. I'm not making this up. This is a real thing people say is catch them, put them in your freezer, and they'll explode. And it's all like, okay, yeah. But this is the thing. People say that, but then it's like, okay, okay, you've killed them, but you've also got an exploded toad in your freezer. You know, I feel like they haven't thought that far ahead. They're just thinking about the killing part. Not anyway, but yeah, I've never done that.
That seems like awful cleanup. Cleaning up frozen dead toad guts. No, thank you.
And the funny thing about that too is like that's how they got into that trouble is not thinking about the next stage. It's always just how do we get rid of this problem, and then the next problem comes along. There's quite a lot of there's quite a lot of introduced animals here. We've had that problem. Rabbits was another one where they just took over. Yeah,
There's a documentary about cane toads. I don't know if it's called cane toads. Like it's been a long time, but yeah, it basically documents this whole everything that Aaron just talked about. And it is like I encourage anyone to find it and watch it. It is amazing how fast the cane toads take over. So fast. Yeah, they just like much faster than the dung what was it? Dung?
Yeah, dung beetle. That's right.
Yeah. Much faster than the animal they were brought to take care of.
Yeah, and also like a lot worse because the dung beetle just keep to themselves, or they just hang out in cow poo.
Yeah,
like toads are like killing pet dogs because they touch them and eat them, and they like covered in poison. It just really, they don't offer much good. More negative.
So when you were introduced to ska, through Mighty Mighty Bosstones, did you think of ska sort of as like this American thing?
Yeah, so that's the interesting thing is delving into it because when you're introduced to that style, obviously Bosstones have the punk and the different elements, and then you start to find out by reading articles and things that they're inspired by the Specials and the two-tone British. So you start looking into that, and then I did start like looking a little bit into reggae a little bit, but I tried to join or join sounds a bit official and weird, but finding out about the Brisbane reggae scene. So I met a few people through that, but it just it's a bit awkward as a white guy. But it's a bit like really nice people, but that's the social part of it did make it hard to be in the ska scene too, because it was very niche. So I was I loved the sound of ska and the ska bands, but trying to get my friends into it who were more just the straight up punk was difficult. So I was going along to local ska shows generally by myself, which is you enjoy watching the band and love it, but you want to like chat with someone in between bands. It can get a bit lonely in between bands, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So you do have to have, if you're in a small scene, have quite thick skin, and especially if you're I'm quite socially awkward, which people can't believe. They're like, well, how'd you get into comedy if you're shy and socially awkward? But it is this weird phenomenon with comedians too, where it's more that you think you're a funny person, not that like I really want to be on stage and seen, and you know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had that conundrum of the social awkwardness. I feel like I'm not answering your question. I'm sorry, but I do trail off a bit. But yeah, so looking into further for ska, I definitely did sort of read. I had that thirst to try and look into it more and read about it and find out more and but like I said, I was also very lazy as well with sort of and you have to remember, like late 90s and that you mostly had to purchase to get your sounds as well.
Yeah, it wasn't until a couple of years later that you could just download everything. And
yeah, that's right. So like that's why I'm only half joking when I say I blame the compilations and that, because you can only sort of go as far as your funds allowed you to, and
Yeah.
I did purchase a lot of music, but yeah, when you like back then, I don't know how the prices matched up to there, but we were paying like $25 to $30 for an album, like a CD, which is like there was huge markups on CDs. And
Was that like an import issue, or is that for local stuff too?
that was just normal, yeah. So I remember Fat Records had they made a priority to keep their things cheap. They had this sticker on the front that would say, "Do not pay over $20," because to try and stop shops sort of price gouging, going over too much. But yeah, it was crazy thinking back. They must have made huge amounts of money on CDs, you know.
Well, and then the worst thing about that was you know, if you're buying something sight unseen and then you take it home and you don't like it, you've just spent $25, $30 on something that you aren't into.
Yeah, and also that's why when you did trust a band and knew you were going to love whatever they put out, that's why you would become very loyal to that band and just like hone in on sort of 5 to 10 bands that you love and
just keep buying their records.
Oh, absolutely! Like, and I became obsessed with Less Than Jake. I got so much like vinyl and stuff too. I don't know if you've probably seen like the crazy shapes and that they have. I had a cheese shaped one for that song Cheese that they have.
Yeah,
That was cool. There was a.
Did you have the pie tin? Did you have that one?
Yes, I did. And I had Hello Rock View, which was like 7 jukebox style singles, like one song each side. A birthday cake one, that was cool. Yeah, they were like, that's what I mean. Like the music was great too, but it was everything that went along with it. You're just like, oh, everything's so cool about this band, like the look of it and the sound, and yeah.
Your first show was Wiseacre and Living End, so there was it was Australian bands, but
Yeah.
when did you really kind of understand that there was Australian ska scene, if you will, local bands?
Yeah, so like I said, started going to see Wiseacre as much as I could, but there wasn't really a Brisbane ska scene apart from them. They were the main ska band. There might have been a couple of others, and then just the punk bands who would have their sort of ska tinges to some of their songs. But then I did start finding out about the bands down south. So Melbourne had a pretty strong scene. There was a couple of compilations that I got of so Melbourne's in a state called Victoria, so it was called Victorian Ska. There was 2 different CD compilations. That's where the band Area 7, they were from there. So yeah, I started really following Area 7. They became like a favorite band. And they were great at first. They were very close ska, sort of touches of Madness and that sort of thing. And then they gradually became rock with horns and like, you know, looking back and reflecting, some things kind of can make you cringe a bit, like lyrics and things, like nothing bad or anything, just they that kind of they have this one track called Second Class Citizen, and it's very like, government, get off it, kind of like Green Day, American Idiot, that entry level politics sort of thing, where I mean, it's fine, like everyone starts somewhere, but it's just that like, damn government, get off my case sort of. If you read the lyrics, they just don't really hold up well. It's quite funny. if anyone wants to look, have a bit of a giggle, look up Area 7 Second Class Citizen lyrics. But they were a cool band. But yeah, it doesn't hold up the lyrics that well. But like I said, nothing bad either. There's no like cancel culture thing. But yeah. So Area 7 got into them. Another one is the Porkers. They're like a legendary Australian band. They've been going since the 80s, and they're awesome as well. And gotten to know the singer Pete a bit over the years. Great guy as well. And
There's a funny story about Pete. He's come back and forth to the U.S. I don't know how many times, but my first ska show I ever went to was in '92 at a place called One Step Beyond. I saw Skank and Pickle. Pete and I are Facebook friends, and I found out that he was at that show too because he was in town visiting, and so he went to as many ska shows as he could while he was in town.
oh, that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so he was at my first ska show ever.
So I love hearing about those genuine moments that are, where people say like, "Oh, it's a small world,"
Mm-hmm.
and I like when they're genuinely moments like that. That actually it's a small world, because here you get people like, "Oh, I was in London and I ran into an Aussie," it's like, because apparently there's a big expat community there. That's not that big of it's a small world. When you say something like that,
what was really interesting was he told me this on Facebook, and then he said I took photos that show, and so he sent me photos, which was really cool. It wasn't like there was photos of me or him in them, but it was cool to see this show that was like really monumental to me because it was just a memory. But then to actually see like documentation of this show was very, very surreal.
Yeah, and he's great because he's you can tell he's genuinely loves, he's because over the years there's been that kind of accusations of bandwagon. I've heard it discussed a lot, especially with the ska explosion of mid '90s. But to know, like for me to know what Australia's like, and to know that he was doing it in the late '80s, and which can be a bit of a culture of not welcoming very like strange or unusual subgenres or sounds, and he's actually from quite a small town, not tiny, but a smaller city too, Newcastle. So yeah, like he's genuine, and they're a great band as well. Yeah, so
yeah, they're really good. They're probably I would say they're probably the most known Australian ska band in the U.S.
Yeah,
I feel like they must have had like a Moon Records. I'm not positive on this, but I feel like maybe they distributed their record.
Mm. Well, it's funny because it is really hard here. You gotta be doing it for the love of it, because obviously ska, lots of members, that's obvious, and then very niche subgenre here too. So they've sort of had this stops and starts over the years. I think I see them pop up still every now and then. They reunion shows and things, but it is a lot of band member changes, and and he had his record label. I think he might have stopped that as well. But
Are you familiar with the Resignators?
yeah, they're from Melbourne as well. I didn't get into them, but yeah, the main Australian ones for me was I was big into Area 7 at the time, and they were probably, in terms of like Porkers are more sustained, just sort of bubbling under the sort of kind of underground bubbling that whole time. But Area 7 were the biggest, just kind of ever get in the pop charts and that, I think.
Yeah.
They had a song that was kind of on the pop charts called "Nobody Likes a Bogan," which I don't know if you've heard the word bogan.
No, what's a bogan?
Well, I was thinking about telling you guys this and trying to think of a comparison, and I don't think redneck is a fair. That's more because redneck's kind of bad connotation. Isn't it? Bogan's just kind of like outer suburbs, sort of a bit rough.
Okay, a rural person.
Do you know Eastbound and Down? Yeah, you know that that kind of yeah.
But it's not a negative. Doesn't have a negative connotation.
Not necessarily. It's not really supposed to. No, not. So that's why I thought redneck isn't probably a great comparison, but that kind of vibe, yeah. Yeah, I'll link you to it or something. But yeah, if you look at it, so it's kind of cool in that that's the most I would say as a very ska song has gotten into the charts, and It didn't go like right to the top, but yeah.
Yeah, it got on the
Yeah,
radio.
yeah. And they went very sort of like rock, almost rock with horns. I've heard you guys call it before, like that kind of real big fish style, and yeah.
The Resignators, fun fact about them is that their guitarist Steve Douglas was in the first version of Gwar.
Oh, cool.
Yes, he's like I think the original guitarist of Gwar. So he's a ska. So it's a ska band with Gwar roots, which is not typically how it works.
Yeah, I think because the logistics here, it's so hard, and the cities are very spread out and small population. And I was trying to think of. I'd love to give you more of an in-depth history, but yeah, basically Porkers, Area 7, and Resignators, and there was a couple of bands before my time in the 80s, the Allniters, Strange Tenants.
Yeah.
Um,
I looked up those bands, and they're very, very two-tone, like very clearly influenced by two-tone ska.
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
They have the sound, they have the look.
yeah.
But it seemed like they were pretty popular in the
Yeah.
80s.
And in Australia, comedy has the same thing where it took a long time to find our own voice because we're a
Mm-hmm.
British colony. So they've was very just whatever's going on in England, we would try and replicate our own version of, and
Yeah.
and I was like I said about for me late 90s, and you can only deal with the environment you're in with CDs and things. It's the same thing about. I think back to like 80s and 90s and whatever, and like the time it would have taken for styles and fashions to come across. Like there's this funny there's this article I read about Jello Biafra from Dead Kennedys coming here, and it's even little things like talking about crowd surfing and that. Like he went to jump from the stage and nobody here knew what was going on, and they just moved, and he just like hit the ground. So it's like that mustn't have. I don't know. Like maybe they were seeing punk hearing audio of punk, but not seeing mosh pits and whatever from punk videos. You know? Yeah. So things like that, and it's the same thing with those 80s Australian ska bands would have only have probably gotten specials and two tones vinyls, I guess. Yeah.
So Australia, for bands that are either touring to Australia or Australian bands, it's a very big country. The cities are spread out pretty far.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I've heard. So it was interesting. Hearing one of your eps. I think it was Against All Authority, and when they talked about how sort of in California where you can do a bunch of shows really close, and then it was harder in some other states, and so that's what Australia's like. Is those
They're from Florida. Florida, they had to. Yeah, it's a very long distance. The East Coast in general, like New York and Philadelphia, those are all very close together. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're driving all the way up from Miami, and yeah, just to get out of that state is a whole long drive.
So in Australia, it's like a whole bunch of that.
Yeah, well, like I've done a lot of road trips driving, like the Crazy Less Than Jake stalking tour, and generally it's each capital is minimum 11 hours drive, and that's like, you know, if you're crazy and just stopping for petrol and toilet. And I usually say 12 hours because you want to stretch your legs and get something to eat and drink too. So yeah, generally 12 hours. All the capital cities are by road, and then you know, you can get a 2-hour flight as well. But yeah, it's not. I usually do road trips.
So when bands come to Australia, do they usually hit up like just the main cities, or do they stay longer in Australia?
Yeah, I've it's funny to see when bands come, some of the cities out west, Adelaide and Perth, they'll always complain, why aren't you coming here? And they have to sort of, you know, in the comments section say, oh, be as diplomatic as they can, but it just wasn't feasible on this financially. Yeah, because it's like Perth is so isolated. It's I've never been out of Australia, but that's my biggest flight I've had in my life, and that was 5 hours. But it's I would never drive there because would be scared of like my car breaking down, because you can just go like 5 or 6 hours of desert where there's just no towns. It's just so isolated. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so yeah, it's like logistics is a big part, I think, where it makes it hard to have ska here. And yeah, just because it is a quite a niche subgenre, and then you have to have 7, 8 people, don't you, as well?
It seems like in general, being in a band would be challenging in Australia
Oh yeah,
for the very reason that you're talking about.
I have a lot of friends in bands and muso friends, and I always joke to them. I say, how do you guys stay together? Like, I can't even keep my act together, and it's one person. Like, Yeah, but that's why it's interesting. Like, even listening to your guests, the comedians you've had, and there's some similarities of comedy and music, but then some very major differences. And I love not having to take gear around. I just usually take a backpack of some merchandise sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's definitely the
yeah,
best part about being a comedian.
yeah,
Not loading gear.
yeah. You don't take a microphone or anything. Yeah.
So you did a thing, I think, a few years ago where you were visiting all the Sanity stores that were still around. We don't have Sanity, but can you explain what Sanity is?
Yeah, well, I guess it was a CD and DVD shop that was massive in the 90s, and basically like Blockbuster. Not like Blockbuster you hire, but Sanity you would purchase, but I meant it's like Blockbuster in that it was phased out because people aren't buying or CDs or DVDs now, but they're gradually closing them down as well, but yeah, I just thought it'd be funny to take a photo standing in front of them, because a lot of people didn't realize they still existed. And it was like, if you went to a small town and you found a Blockbuster, you'd think this is pretty strange and cool, isn't it? Yeah. And it just grew from there. Yeah.
Is it kind of a thrill to be able to go into these shops now and just be able to buy whatever because it's all been discounted?
Yeah, yeah. And it just creates discussion, because everyone's like, people have their theories. They're like, I think too many people have watched Breaking Bad and things like that, because everyone's like, oh, it must be a front for something, like channeling money, or, you know. But I think the real explanation's a bit more like simpler, where it's just maybe the internet's not as good in those areas, because they're mainly in regional towns, small regional towns, and
Yeah.
outer suburbs of cities too, like old shopping malls, Yeah. But I just have I just use the social media as much as I can. So I have a few of those little series going with just silly photos, and I have this other one going where I like, if I meet a celeb here, like usually a lot of sports athletes and things, whatever they're known for, I'll say, like, I'll add me into it, where I'll say, like, say they're a football player that scored 1,000 points, and I'll say 1,000 points between us, but they're just silly little things. But my theory is just use the socials. Like, a lot of people make fun of them, and a lot of performers and artists, but it's a free thing that allows you to get your act out there, and it helps.
I don't know if you still do it, or you did some stuff with Vice.
Yeah, Vice Australia. I've done a few things that are like the offshoots, the Australian offshoot of American things. So I don't know if that's counts. If I can, like, I did something with Comedy Central as well, but it was because they try and come out here, and then they quickly find that our small population is like, why is only 1,000 people watching these things? Like, they think I suck, which I do, but but no, but it's like, it's also the population. You know what I mean? Because they're thinking what a success is over there, and trying to match it. Yeah, and we're like 20 million people or something. We're like pretty much less people here than California or something, And but yeah, so Vice, I got to do a few things there. They call it branded content, which is basically, it's just a nicer name than advertising, but basically companies pay. Well, like, because the old ad, like the old style of an ad, people will quickly pick up on, right, and just be like, I don't want
Yeah.
to be told what to buy. So this new modern idea is to sort of like they send me along to a factory and do a tour of it. So the company has paid for it, and it's not like buy our product, but it's getting that brand name out there. So
Yeah, it's made it look like it's a documentary, or that you have decided this is an important company to profile.
yeah, that's right. So one of them was an ice cream bar factory, which is cool.
Maxi Buns?
Yeah, that's right. It's half. We call biscuit. I guess you guys would call cookie. Yeah, and half the other side's like chocolate ice cream, and yeah, and that was pretty fun. Another one was this will be a weird Aussie thing for you. Chicken salt. So it's like salt that's got chicken flavoring in it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that popular?
It actually is. Yeah, we people love it on hot chips here, and yeah.
It's not vegan, is it?
Well, that's the funny thing. It actually is because it
Wow.
doesn't. It's all just.
It's all just chemicals.
Yeah. It's all just.
Does it actually taste like chicken though?
That's debatable, but like, if you know, like a lot of flavored things, it's quite debatable whether like crisp. You have some crisp flavors that are they're called like barbecue or something. It's like this isn't barbecue, you know.
I wanted to run past you some more foods, more Aussie foods, and you can just tell everybody what they are.
Sure.
Tim Tams.
Well, Tim Tams it's basically chocolate, but it's like a chocolate. It's like a little rectangle piece of chocolate, but it's like crunchy as well. But yeah,
Okay.
and very Moorish. I can finish a packet quite easily.
Okay, there's something called fairy bread.
So fairy bread is like a piece of bread that has like the little bits of colored dots. We call them hundreds and thousands. I don't know if you got that there, but
I think we just call them sprinkles.
yeah. So yeah, it's basically that. Very but you only really see it you'd see it at children's parties and up to like the age of 5 or 6, and then you don't see it anywhere else.
Does it have butter too? Bread,
Yeah,
butter,
yeah.
and sprinkles?
It's not the healthiest thing around.
What about burger rings?
So burger rings are just like we call them like, I guess, chips or crisps, like like a pack you open up and as a snack, and it's kind of like a shape of obviously a ring, like an onion ring, but yeah, it's just crunchy like a Cheeto, I guess you have there, Cheetos or
Yes.
yeah.
So burger rings, would those go well inside of a Whopper?
Yeah. When my sister comes back, because she lives over there, she always brings Reese's for me, which I love. That's my favorite.
You guys don't have Reese's over there?
No, we don't. No.
Oh, that's weird.
So most people in this country at my age have heard of Vegemite because of the Men at Work song, but I don't know that very many people here know what Vegemite is.
Aaron, have you never had Vegemite?
I have not ever had Vegemite.
What? I have some Vegemite I can hook you up with. Sonny from Del Santo sent it to me.
I actually hate it. I hate it, but I'll get kicked out of this country because a lot of people like it. Well, we did this tour for school. It's funny, to a beer brewery, and they told us how. And that's another funny thing, that a school took us there. I think they should investigate that teacher who decided that. But they told us about like the yeast that they don't like, the the yeast to make beer. So whatever they don't use or something gets taken to get used by Vegemite. So it's this weird kind of, it's like an offshoot product of another product, which is quite funny. Yeah, nothing gets wasted here.
What does it taste like? And Adam, feel free to enter the conversation.
Oh, Vegemite. It's sour. Like imagine, I can't even describe it, like putting on like a jam or a peanut butter that's just really bitter and sour. Yeah.
Yeah. Aaron, try to imagine like A1 steak sauce, like cooked down, and then you spread that on toast. And that's a pretty good estimate. I mean, it's very meaty tasting to me.
I was just thinking about, because you've had a few comedians on and Scar, and like the connections of ska to comedy. So the Bosstones, like seeing them in the Clueless movie was a big one for me.
Mhm.
And yeah, a few different things like that. I know Roger from Less Than Jake, I think he was a big Mitch Hedberg fan as well. So that was a great, for me, it was like, oh, that's awesome. Like one of my heroes liking one of my other, because Mitch Hedberg's my favorite comedian.
Yeah.
So,
What's your favorite Mitch Hedberg bit?
Oh, it'd have to be the Pringles tennis ball Pringles. I love that. I actually had a shirt that when my parents went over to see my sister, they brought back for me of one of his jokes. So it's when the escalator breaks, you know that.
Mm-hmm. And it just turns into stairs.
Yeah. It's not one of his best jokes, but it was pretty cool. I had like a cartoon version of that on a shirt. It's like all shirts. You eventually either, I don't know, you just lose. Do you have that problem with shirts? You just lose track of them, or
they wear out, or you
yeah,
put them in the back of a drawer, and then by the time you find them, they've got that weird bin in the back of a drawer smell. You don't want to wear it anymore.
What other? Do you have any other ska comedian connections?
Well, I really loved the eps you had with the comedians, but I guess there was kind of wasn't one of the No Doubt. I think Gwen's brother was involved with The Simpsons. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, he was a founder of No Doubt, and he quit. What's his name?
Eric, I think.
Yes, Eric Stefani. Whew.
And that was pretty cool finding out that all the early ska that No Doubt did too, because it was like I was expecting it to be like maybe like tinges of ska, like how like Rancid and NoFX, but it was like genuine ska, wasn't it? Like
the original stuff, yeah.
And I should have researched this a bit better. I'm trying to go off the top of my head. Help me out if you can think of any. But yeah, there's been a little bit of another one. Dickie Barrett being the announcer on Jimmy Kimmel's show. Yeah, like that was pretty cool. That was like a cool thing. Yeah, there's been a few.
So any other comedians in Australia that you know that you're friends with? Are they fans of ska?
Yeah, yes, I do. I believe my friend, he lives here, but he's from America, Mike Goldstein. We chat about Real Big Fish and that and Rancid and things. I feel like a lot of it's you guys being in defense of ska. There is a bit, as you'd know well about the snarkiness of sort of when ska gets raised as a topic, it can be a bit of a punchline. But I've always defended it, but I do find sort of like bands like Real Big Fish, I find hard to defend 100%. You know, I can see where that kind of.
Is there sort of an attitude in Australia that ska is kind of like whatever?
Well, that's the problem. I feel people will emphasize on sort of, you know, the like, which I feel when you have songs like Propaganda with Ska Sucks is the negative connotations of bandwagon jumping, the annoying kids with all the checkers and everything, and they emphasize. And I'm like, guys, you got to see the cool stuff as well, you know, and that's why like I've always loved it, but I did drift away a little bit from it, but and some of it looking back doesn't hold up great, but then a lot of it does as well, yeah. So like for me, I these days I'm not I'll admit I'm like I was obsessed with Less Than Jake, but I've moved on to sort of bands like the Mountain Goats now, but they're an important part of my growing up, you know, and I respect that. And there's parts of it that'll be cringe, but like Hello Rockview, that's still an amazing album, I reckon.
Yeah.
But sorry, I feel like I never answer your questions. That's my biggest problem, is just drifting away. But
it's a bit, isn't it?
Yeah,
This is a bit. You're winding us up.
But no, getting back to what you're saying, there's a few of us who do appreciate and like ska, and I got to be in a movie which was awesome called the Merger. I did ask my sister if it's on Netflix over there, but apparently it's only on Netflix here. I think it's on Amazon or something over there. Anyway, but the main guy in that, Damien Cullinan, so he's the main actor and also wrote it and did a lot of stuff. And he's a big ska fan from way back, sort of 90s and 80s. So yeah, in Australia, he went to see all the ska bands in the 80s. So that's one I can absolutely say is a long time ska head. Is that the right word? Defender of ska. Yeah.
Sure.
Ska soldier. I don't know. We got to think of something for if you defend ska, you're a ska soldier, I reckon.
You're a defender, a ska defender.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. But yeah, I'll definitely trying to keep the flame flickering, and yeah, that's why any bands, like if I still can see that I love their work, I'll definitely like promote them and try to push them. Yeah, I got to dig up my old ska shirts. I used to have so many. Like I had Bucko 9 and Less Than Jake shirts, and probably outgrown them though.
What else? Can you think of any other shirts you had?
No Effects. I only had one No Effects. Yeah, they actually just toured here actually, but like I kind of outgrew them a little bit. In terms of ska, well, I had a few Wiseacre ones. They were the local Brisbane band here. They had some funny shirts actually. The one said, which is actually an old classic design, it said "bullshit," which I've seen Lenny from The Simpsons wearing when they flash back to him in the 70s. So, and yeah, a lot of silly humor, as was the style at the time. I'm sure if you remember, I had this other one I got, which I bought at the Warp Tour '99, and it said "hoof hearted," so it said HOOF and then hearted with a question mark, like oh lol, say it quick. It's hoof hearted, top quality humor. That's I shouldn't be too cheeky. I people will probably dissect my comedy now and
All right, I got a totally left field question for you. You got kicked off of Twitter a few years ago.
Oh yeah, and now I'm thinking to ask Elon if he'll let me back. Yeah.
So what happened?
Oh, like so, I can't really resist like some of my friends and people I know who like believe in stuff, but they can resist arguing with like idiots, I can't. So if I see something bad, I just have to like argue with them, and then so I saw someone being racist on Twitter and I was like, yeah, started getting an argument with them and used some coarse language, and then it was like that was my first warning, like you whatever it is, a week ban or something, and I think I might have had two. Then I did it again, but then I'm like, all right, I'm going to stop. I don't want to be kicked off this thing. And then another comedian just put something up about Mr. Bean, right? It said, imagine if Mr. Bean was Australian or something. And I just said, and I used the C word, as you guys know, we use a lot more here than you do there.
Yeah.
Which I don't even usually use. Like people who know me know I don't swear a lot, or what you guys say, cuss, don't you? Yeah, but like, so I just wrote it, and then next thing I'm kicked off forever off Twitter.
That's all it took. It's the C word.
Yeah, and like, if I knew I was going, I wish I would have done something worthwhile. But it's like now I'm off forever, and it was like I said, I used the socials, and I didn't use Twitter a lot, but it still really sucks just to know that one outlet is gone for you as a person who's trying to get your name out there. So yeah, if you're listening, Elon, put me back on.
Yeah, you might get back on. I think you're encouraged to use that kind of language now.
Oh man, like it was hard. It was really hard because I was at a really tough point in my life too, with some stuff happening in my private life where it was, and so it's just everything was magnified. Like if something bad would happen, it was just magnified how bad it was. Like the whole world's against me, you know. But then looking back now, it's not a huge deal, but it would be nice to have another outlet to use.
Don't go anywhere. If you want to hear the rest of this conversation, head over to our Patreon. Thank you for listening to In Defense of Ska. Please rate and review this podcast and tell a friend. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at In Defense of Ska. Pick up Aaron's book, In Defense of Ska, at your local bookstore or online. This podcast is edited by Chris Reeves of Ska Punk International. This is your co-host, Adam Davis of Omnigong, leaving you by saying ska now more than ever.
You know what? I want to tell you something.
Tell me.
Okay, so my wife Amy, she was watching this show on Hulu called Koala Man. You seen that? It's an Australian.
No. That's real?
It's totally insane.
Okay.
But one character that's like the friend or whatever, he looks exactly like Aaron Gocs. And my wife Amy's all, isn't that dude that you interviewed for your podcast? And I was like, it very well he might very well be the person voicing this, since he's like popular in Australia.
So was it him?
No, it wasn't.
Oh.
But I don't have a full grasp of how popular he is, but I know he's pretty popular and he gets like TV shows and stuff. So
yeah. And I feel like us over here in the United States have a skewed vision of what is actually popular in Australia, or what even is in Australia.
Yeah.
So I think the only way to know is to go there.
We covered plenty of Australian non-ska stuff in this episode.
Sure.
So make sure yeah. So let's just I think we just need to really break it down and just be like, you know what? Check out the Patreon.
You've never heard us say
Patreon.
that before, but you know what you might not have heard us say? We got new tiers over there. What does that mean, Aaron?
That means that like there's different levels of support. You can kind of support us, you can super support us, you somewhere in between. And any of those levels we appreciate.
You can super support us. You can super duper support us. You can super duper duper support us.
Yeah.
And we'll appreciate it at any level.
Yeah. And if you just don't want to give us any money at all and just listen every week and subscribe and tell your friends and just it's fine. We'll appreciate that too.
But we'll remember.
But if you do happen to, hit the lottery or whatever, get a raise at work.
Break us off. Come on.
Get a little coffee. That's all we're saying.
Yeah.
And you know what you get?
What do you get?
You get bonus content. You get early access.
Wow.
Do you want to listen to next week's? Yeah.
You want to hear it early?
Guess what? We'll even tell you what it is that you'll be getting early. Are you ready?
What is it?
Eric Dano.
Boom. Holophonics.
That's it. Yeah.
New record on Bad Time Records. Lavos.
Double boom. Yeah.
Check it out.
All right. Peace.